Thanks, Kevin. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webcast. In this webcast, we'll first do a brief introduction of MemSQL as a company, and then we'll talk about the MemSQL product. We'll also talk about the features in the product and the different industries and markets where people use MemSQL. So first, a little bit about the company. So MemSQL we were founded in 2011 as part of that Y Combinator class. Today, we have experienced leadership from Facebook and SQL Server, which is where our founders came from, Oracle and Fusion.io, and several other companies as well. We were really founded around solving that enterprise architecture gap of having real-time transactions on big data workloads. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next slide. As such, the product that was built, MemSQL, is an in-memory, so really fast, distributed, which can scale out, relational database. And to date, we have about 50 million in funding from top-tier investors such as Excel, the company that incubated Cloudera, and Coastal Ventures. So a little bit about the need that we were built around. So the big need really is, as a company, how do you deal with transactions coming in really, really fast and doing analytics on both that real-time state, those real-time transactions, and all the historical data? Typically, what companies would do is have a real-time workflow and then a batch process that loads those real-time transactions into some other data warehouse. And what MemSQL provides is a way to do transactions and analytics on hot data and cold data at the same time, essentially making your company into a real-time enterprise doing analytics on real-time data. So elevating that up, what we call a real-time business, you are a real-time business if you're able to ingest and serve data simultaneously. Real-time businesses can also deliver analytics on real-time data with growing user bases. So we're talking about, in the scale of thousands internally for your data scientists, or in the scale of millions if your web scale application. A real-time business is also able to detect and respond to changes the moment it happens. So the moment something comes up in your real-time workflow, you're immediately able to do action on that. And that's where MemSQL helps. So MemSQL is the real-time database for transactions and analytics. It's real-time because a lot of the data storage and processing is in memory. So it's very fast. It's RAM speed. We are also distributed, which means you can scale out MemSQL by adding more nodes, thus reducing costs and linearly scaling your workloads and data storage. We are a relational database, relational meaning SQL. We fully believe here in the viability and the ubiquity of SQL. And there are lots of SQL developers out there, and it's very easy to build applications against MemSQL, which is a SQL database. MemSQL is a piece of software that can be deployed in your data center on-prem or in the cloud. And you can also deploy these on VMs or containers, and you can also deploy it on the Azure and AWS marketplaces today. A little bit about the different markets, applications, and solutions where MemSQL is applied. MemSQL is applied essentially in a wide range. If you look at the markets column, the big theme here is where data is collected and insight is immediately required. For example, in ad tech, how do you place the relevant ads in front of users depending on their activity at that moment in time? Financial services, how do you detect risk, or how do you match buyers and sellers in trades, etc. For applications, the big theme there is real-time analytics, and lots of the other applications fall underneath that. Risk management and personalization are sort of ad tech use cases, ad tech applications, portfolio tracking for finance, and monitoring and detection for your infrastructure. Solutions include IoT, the Internet of Things, especially since location and sensor data is everywhere, as well as consolidating your infrastructure and operationalizing Spark. Just really quickly about the recent Forrester wave. So we've been recognized by Forrester, which is one of the top analyst firms, as one of the strong performers in the in-memory database space. And if you look at this chart, the other vendors ahead of us are essentially the big elephants for the database world. So we are very, very well placed to be a very strong performer and a very strong player in this field.
David, let me interrupt you too. You can download the Forrester Wave report if you go to memsql.com/Forrester, and that'll give you a good overview of all the vendors in the landscape and an overview of MemSQL. Go ahead.
Thanks, Kevin. A little bit about the roadmap. We've had 4 versions to date. In MemSQL 1, launched in 2012, it was an in-memory database, but it was single box. So all the SQL is done on one box. MemSQL 2 came the year after, and we introduced the concept of distributed. So now MemSQL is a distributed database where you can scale out by adding more nodes. We also introduced JSON data into MemSQL. So now MemSQL has integrated relational and JSON data types. MemSQL 3, we introduced the Columnstore. So MemSQL actually has 2 storage mediums today. There's an in-memory row store and a disk-based column store. The idea is that your real-time transactions go into your very, very fast in-memory row store, and then when you want to put that into historical storage, you use our disk-based column store as well. So MemSQL essentially now functions as both your OLTP and OLAP database. MemSQL 3 also introduced cross-DC replication and multi-statement transactions. And with MemSQL 4, released in 2015, the big announcement there was Community Edition, which I'll talk about in the next slide. MemSQL 4 also introduced features like Geospatial intelligence, so now you can define points and lines inside MemSQL. Connectors to the big data world, such as a Spark connector and a Hadoop or HDFS loader. We also have a enhanced cost-based optimizer and deployment tools that really simplifies the way you deploy across distributed systems, which I'll talk about more in the next slide. More on Community Edition. We see Community Edition as the easiest way for developers to get access to the innovations we bring. Community Edition is free, and it is new with the MemSQL 4 release in 2015. It has unlimited capacity, unlimited scale, meaning you can use as much RAM as you want for Community Edition and as many nodes as you want for Community Edition, with all the SQL features you need. So everything you need for transactions and analytics is in Community Edition. With Enterprise Edition, which we continue to offer a free 30-day trial, so we encourage, if you want to deploy MemSQL in production, to get the 30-day trial of Enterprise. This includes 24/7 support, even as you're doing your trial, as well as features that are enterprise only, such as high availability for having a master and slave copies of all your data, cluster replication, more fine-grained user controls or user grants, and a few security features like SSL. Let's talk a little bit about the column store. As I mentioned earlier, MemSQL has 2 storage types, an in-memory row store and disk-based column store. And even though we say MemSQL is an in-memory database, we are actually both. We started as an in-memory database, but now we are also a disk-based column store database. The purpose of the column store is to store large data volumes for historical analysis. You can actually do database table joins between your in-memory row store table and your disk-based column store table, creating very powerful analytics and very powerful things that you can do with the data. Each column store has a set of projections, or it has a clustered index and min-max indexes that help with query performance on columnar data. And MemSQL, starting with MemSQL 4, includes the storage for disk-based column store for free. MemSQL actually licenses based on RAM, based on DRAM, and we allow you to use as much disk as you want. MemSQL Geospatial, another feature introduced in MemSQL 4 that we'll talk about here. It allows you to use points, lines, polygons, filters on those, and measurement functions, all native to MemSQL. So you can actually define, a point, you can define an area inside MemSQL and do functions like nearest neighbor, etc. This has been really powerful for lots of our customers, and we've also created several demos on it for recent trade shows. To access those demos, simply go to memsql.com/demo. Now the product ecosystem. As you can see here, MemSQL is in the center of this slide. We MemSQL is a database, and as such, we know that lots of systems need to interact to store and access their data into a database. So we've made very deliberate and great efforts to integrate with the ecosystem. The first really good decision that we made was to be wire protocol compatible with MySQL. So if you have a MySQL client driver, you can easily connect that to MemSQL. Just change the host and it will work with MemSQL. And that's really powerful because that allows BI dashboards like Tableau or Looker or Zoom data to connect into MemSQL. That allows a lot of the pre-built applications that you've already created that use MySQL or SQL to connect to MemSQL. That also allows lots of your developer IDEs to connect to MemSQL. In addition, MemSQL also has ODBC, JDBC, and .NET connectors that allow you to load from other data sources or build more robust SQL applications. We have the MemSQL Loader that is an open source project actually that allows users to load from S3 and HDFS into MemSQL. And we also have a Spark connector. As you can see here, Spark is on the right side and there are lots of arrows, and that's lots of arrows because there is data transfer from MemSQL into Spark and Spark into MemSQL, so both ways, bidirectional, in a parallelized fashion. At the bottom of the slide, you see Azure, AWS, and Mesosphere. These three platforms are platforms on which you can optionally run MemSQL as well. We are offered on the Azure and AWS marketplaces and have great integration with Mesosphere, DCOS. A little bit more about Spark. The way we see our Spark connector is enabling this thing that we call the real-time Trinity, which is having a message queue, an example of which is Apache Kafka, storing your real-time transaction logs. That gets piped into Spark, which serves essentially as your transformation tier, your data transformation tier. You can leverage Spark programming libraries like MLlib, GraphX, or Spark Streaming to enrich your data. Followed by which data is moved into MemSQL, and essentially MemSQL is your database of record. It is your persistence layer. It is the layer in which you can build your operationalized applications, and it's your data serving tier. And the Spark connector allows us to connect Spark to MemSQL in an efficient fashion. And in fact, we've built an end-to-end data pipeline in under 1 second. And you can see that demo on our website as well with Pinterest. Another big piece for us was the MemSQL Loader. The MemSQL Loader allows you to load files with a single command. Thus, you can use, from your inputs, you can have a real-time path going directly into MemSQL without using the loader, and you can use the loader to load from S3 and HDFS, and that essentially could be your batch path. With this architecture, we are able to essentially simplify Lambda architectures. Finally, there's MemSQL Ops. MemSQL Ops is our web UI interactive cluster installer. With MemSQL Ops, you can install an entire cluster across several nodes or a cluster in a box residing in a single node. MemSQL Ops has both a web-based UI, as you can see here in the screenshot, and a command line interface. It also provides robust mechanisms for cluster control and monitoring. Within MemSQL Ops, one of its features actually is you can run a database speed test. So one of the questions we frequently get is how fast is MemSQL? Well, you can find out. Simply install MemSQL using Ops and click one button to run a speed test. It tells you, it creates a simple table, loads it with as much data as it can, runs queries on it at the same time, and shows you the results as shown here in this screenshot. Finally, a little bit about how analysts have been speaking about us. We've been very fortunate for lots of analysts to talk about us favorably and continue to talk about us favorably. Here, Gartner draws attention to MemSQL as the new agile solution to HANA. Enterprise Management Associates values using SQL and JSON in a single database. 451 outlines operational analysis in real time, and ESG validates some of the performance work we've done. So now I'll turn it over to Connor for the MemSQL demo.
So this MemSQL demo that I will be showing you, if you want to try the demo at home, you can.
The easiest way to set it up is to go to cloud.memsql.com, and it will set up a MemSQL cluster for you running on AWS. Just make sure that you have the install MemSQL demo checkbox checked. So what we're going to be doing in this demo is we're going to be inserting a whole bunch of data into MemSQL really quickly. And while we're doing that, we're also going to be running analytical style queries, like the kind of queries that a business analyst or a data scientist might be running. So the novelty here is that we're able to do both of these at the same time. Traditionally, you would separate your operational database from your analytical database, and by the time you're extracting insight from the data, it's already hours or days old. Whereas in the MemSQL case, we're able to run these more complex queries directly in the operational database. So we're going to be inserting data into this table line item, and before we start inserting data into this table, let's just look at the table. So don't worry, you don't need to understand everything that's going on here. The only reason I showed this to you is so that you see that this isn't some tricky little demo table. This is a real table that you would use in an actual operational use case. You can see here in the key column, there are several indexes on it. So we're going to be inserting data into this table and into one other table. So you can see right now that this line item table is empty. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on a write workload and then jump over to MemSQL Ops. And you can see that each of these is a node in the MemSQL cluster, and you can see that the CPUs are starting to be engaged. Now when we jump over to the status view, you can see that we're going to be pushing between 450, 500,000 inserts per second into MemSQL. So that's fairly impressive, but the real novelty of MemSQL is actually when we're able to run more complex queries. So you can see we've already inserted almost 8 million records, almost 10 million records. Notice that every time I run the query, the result is different. This is because MemSQL isn't caching the results of the query. It's actually executing the query every time. So that's a very simple query. Let's run a more complex query. So this is the, whoops, that's not what I wanted. This is the type of query that an analyst might run. It's essentially computing, taking all of the business across an entire shipping network in this case, and it's determining what percentage of it is coming from certain countries. So you can see it's a much more complex query. It's the sort of thing that you might run to try to understand your business operations. And instead of having to understand it hours or days later, you're able to execute these queries while simultaneously inserting thousands of records into MemSQL, or hundreds of thousands of records into MemSQL. So just to conclude here, the really nice thing about MemSQL is that because it speaks SQL, you can use it with just about any business intelligence tool that you want. So this is a similar query to what I was showing you in the demo screen. I've changed it a little bit to actually make it more broad. So instead of just looking at a single country, we're comparing 3 different countries: Argentina, Brazil, and Canada. And we're computing all of the business that was done in those countries. And you can see over on the right here, you now see the relative proportions of the line items that were in each of those countries. And so this is effectively a real-time dashboard because the data in MemSQL is live. And you're running the SQL query directly on this operational data. And you get this dashboard without having to build a fancy application. It's just writing a single SQL query. So that's the end of the demo. Remember, if you want to try it out, you can go to cloud.memsql.com and make sure that you check the install MemSQL demo, and you can play around with it yourself.
Great, thanks, Connor. So now we'll open it up to audience questions. If you have any questions, please enter them through the GoToWebinar question panel, and we'll field them as they come in for the next 10 minutes or so. We got a question during the webcast, which is, what happens if a node fails in MemSQL?
Okay, I can take that. So if a node fails in MemSQL, there's one of 2 things. First is if you configured high availability, and second is if you did not. If you configured high availability, if a node fails, pretty much nothing happens. Your operation continues, you remain fully online. And that's because one node failure causes an automatic failover internally within the cluster to promote some of the, we have master and slave partitions. We promote the slave partitions into master and continue operation. Now, if you did not configure high availability and one of the nodes fails, you still do not lose your data, because in MemSQL, when the node recovers, even though the failure was not graceful, MemSQL can recover by replaying transaction logs and snapshot files and placing them into memory.
Great, thanks, Stephen. And we have another question, which is, what happens when you run out of memory in MemSQL?
Oh, yeah. So when you run out of memory in MemSQL, there's two things, right? First is there are specific database knobs that you can configure to toggle just how much memory MemSQL will use. So there's an amount of memory for your tables and amount of memory for MemSQL processes. You can, if you're about to run out, you can simply tune those variables. A second piece is that you can always add more memory into MemSQL by scaling out. So you can simply add a new node, have MemSQL rebalance its different data partitions across those nodes to create more capacity. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I think so. And just one last question, it looks like here, which is, aside from, you mentioned Tableau and it looks like you were working in Chart.io, what other business intelligence tools does MemSQL integrate with?
Yeah, so it integrates with pretty much whatever tool you'd want to use. I've personally used it with Tableau, QlikView, MicroStrategy. I was showing you Chart.io today. I've used Zoom Data, a lot of them.
Okay, well, thanks, Connor and Stephen, for presenting today. If you have any follow-up questions, please email info@memsql.com or send us a tweet at memsql on Twitter. And I encourage everyone to go download MemSQL and try our community edition, which is free forever. And you can do that at memsql.com/download. You can also sign up for an enterprise trial there, which is free for 30 days. And thanks again, and have a good one.